Hello there, sword friends. Today I'm going to tell you about this sword right here. It is the Generation 2 BWT Katana. And before I get into the nitty-gritty of the review, there are a couple things I should cover. One, I bought this sword with my own money secondhand. You might notice it doesn't have the original saya, though if you're unfamiliar with this katana, you certainly wouldn't necessarily know that. But it is a used secondhand version, so know that it doesn't necessarily represent what you might be able to get with this sword if you were to buy it new. Though that is not necessarily an option. That's another thing I should note. This is a sword that has been out of production for some time, and though it looks like there are a couple active links that might be able to get you a new one, it's unlikely that you'll be able to find one in a new condition out there. But they do come up secondhand from time to time, so while I'm late to the party, I thought it was still worth doing a review. The next thing you should know is that I am not affiliated with Generation 2. Nobody's coaxing me to do this review. I just thought I would do it while I had the chance. And lastly, I'm not an expert in anything. I'm an enthusiast. I like swords and I like moving them around. I do study Japanese martial arts, but I'm far from good at them. So keep in mind that, yeah, all that stuff while I talk. Here we go. Now, I typically start with the pommel, the kashra, the end, this bit right here. And this one is actually a bit unique in the sense that it is a horn kashra, and that this bit right here, this pommel, this end, is not made of metal like it conventionally is on most production swords that you might buy, or even most custom iterations. It's made out of horn. Now, it's not bad or untraditional to have a kashra made out of horn, but it's weird to see it on a production katana, and that this is really the only one I've seen with a horn kashra in a katana. Now, it seems durable, it's well polished, it's good. Horn is well, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's horn. And so it's actually a pretty durable material for kashra. It's not necessarily super resilient. It can crack, especially if it's on the thin side. I don't know exactly how this is affixed to this sword, but in a sense it makes me feel like it's probably not as durable as metal. That said, it doesn't necessarily have to be. This seems well fixed on. It doesn't move around. It's on there tight. It's smooth and it's light, and overall it's a good material. I really like the execution. The simple fact that they've used a different material is something I kind of tip my hat to. I actually like the execution and the detail in the horn. Naturally, the material has kind of this wavy, well, I don't exactly know what it's called. I think it's a fibrous structure, though I don't know what the chemical composition of the horn is. In effect, though, it has a pattern to it, which is unique. Like if it were wood or if it is metal, it has a different visual appeal to it than the conventional metal does, and that much is enough to make it stand out in my mind. I really like the look. It's also worth noting that it's light, and while it's only a couple ounces, all of those things tend to add up, and it makes it lighter. So it fits within the realm of tradition. It looks pretty cool, and overall it's reasonably well executed. Now, is it perfect? No. There are some mild variation along kind of where the Ito knot comes through. There's no ledge in the transition or anything like that, but there's some parts that are smoother and more polished than others. It's not a perfect execution, but overall I would say it's really quite good, given that this is a $370 katana. At least that's the idea. I think that's what they retail for. We'll move on to the Ito now, the handle, the ska, or the rest of the handle anyway. So if we talk about the Ito, this is a suede type leather Ito, and it almost just looks like kind of a rawhide type substance. It's frayed but still new. This hasn't seen a lot of use. And some parts of it move around really easily, some parts do not. In any case, it's a very comfortable material to grab. It's easy to get a hold of. It fits in your hand well, though I get the sensation that an Ito like this is probably going to absorb the oils from your hands easily and look dirty pretty quickly. I haven't seen one of these with a lot of use on it, though, so I don't really know, honestly, how they age, though I have seen leather Ito, tsunami Ito, or any other kind of porous substance like this really absorb the oil from your hands and start to look kind of gritty after a while. That said, the grittiness almost adds a certain appeal to it. I kind of like it, actually, but that's subjective. In any case, know that it is a little bit loose in some spots, and that seems pretty par for the course. I've actually had another one of these swords, and I'll talk on that in just a moment. In any case, it is not perfect. It's serviceable, though. Underneath the Ito, there is this samegawa looking substance that looks like plastic, or like a highly lacquered type of samegawa that's been sanded down. I honestly don't know what it is, but I would venture a guess it is or it is not samegawa. That's great guessing on my part, but I don't really know what it is. It is very highly sheen, though, and you can hear the samegawa kind of move under my fingers. it sounds like Mr. Clean is trapped under the Ito, and I don't know what to make of that. It's not necessarily the best thing. It makes me think that the Ito will loosen unnecessarily over time because the Samegawa is, at least presumably if that is Samegawa, trapped under there and really kind of spit shined in such a way that it is not doing any favors to the Ito holding on. We have 2 additional Makugi. These are supposedly bamboo, but they almost look like really, I don't know what they are. They're a darker color, and it almost looks like kamagang or some sort of Filipino hardwood. I'm speculating that this sword is actually made in the Philippines. That would be my guess because of the woods used. It reminds me anyway of some of the earlier Chris Cutlery pieces, as well as the pieces from TFW, based on the Samegawa that's used and the woods that are used. This looks like it was probably from the Philippines, but that is very speculative on my part. The Minuki are floral Minuki that are really rudimentary pieces made out of copper. They're fine though. I honestly like that they're simple and they're different. A lot of times if you have 1,000 swords made with the same Minuki, this cliche dragon looking Minuki, made out of brass, you see the same thing over and over and over again, and it makes it not that special. So these floral Minuki are things that I've only seen on this sword, and that makes them unique and a little bit different. Moving on to the Fuchi, there are some ledges in the transition. It's not good. Now, in the details that I could find, it said that this Fuchi was also made out of horn. This appears to be metal to me and not horn. So I suppose it would be really weird if it were made out of horn. I haven't seen any traditionally made out of that, at least in a katana. But in any case, it appears to be made out of metal. And it lines up. I mean, honestly, it's not bad. Disregard the transitions between this saya and the Fuchi because this saya is not original to the blade. So it's a different thing. It's just kind of in there for show. The saya on this one, regrettably, was lost. I do have some videos to show about the saya, or not videos, but photos to show the saya that I had on a different sword, but we'll disregard that for the moment. The other thing to note is the seppa, and the seppa are a little bit classier than you might honestly expect. There are 2 seppa here. One is larger than the other, and they're made out of different materials. One is copper and one is brass. Now this is aged, so the copper and brass have patinaed ever so slightly that at first glance you might not even notice that they're made out of different materials, but it's one small little detail that I really like. Also, the transitions between them are quite good. They feather out and you can see this kind of subtle transition, this largening between the copper seppa and the brass seppa, and I like the look. It matches on the reverse side as well. You have a copper and a brass seppa, and it's just a detail that you don't see in a lot of other swords. And honestly, the mix between material of copper and brass is not something I conventionally like, but in this case, I think it's a really classy look. I have to say, I like the overall execution. The tsuba is made out of steel, and it's a simple kind of shape, traditional-ish Japanese shape, though I don't necessarily know how traditional it is. I would note that the tsuba has, it widens, so basically it has a ledge, and it's thicker in the center, and kind of thins down towards the edges. That's, even though it's a metal shape that's obviously been ground or sanded down, it's still more traditional in terms of its overall shape than a lot of cast pieces are that have a uniform thickness all the way around. This has a wider in the middle and thinner towards the end, which is something I see in more handmade or antique pieces. And I like the overall execution. It's simple and elegant, and overall the just general hilt, the handle assembly is elegant and simple, and it doesn't have a lot of frills, but at the same time it invests in different materials and just something outside of the norm in such a way that I find the simplicity and elegant almost in its execution. The habaki supposedly is a steel piece that has been copper brushed, has a copper patina to it. I don't exactly know if that's the case or not, but it is at least a little different. It has 2 lines. Basically, it looks different than the average bear, and overall the execution is reasonably good for a mass production habaki. It's not bad. It looks the part and seems to line up well. Nothing juts out as bad or inappropriate in this realm. Now, is the habaki good on the scale of antique or genuine Nihonto super awesome? No, it's not. But for a mass production piece, it looks pretty decent. Now, in terms of the saya itself, the saya is something that this sword did not, well, it came with the saya, but it wasn't the right saya. The original saya had kind of a I don't know, it was almost like a plastidip type substance that was around it. It had a different feeling and texture to it. It was a little different overall. Something again that I've seen from swords from TFW, and I don't think I've seen them from Chris Cutlery, but TFW or maybe Chris Cutlery. It's tough for me to remember. In any case, they have this kind of textured saya, which was new to me at the time, and it's not something that this sword has, unfortunately. But I have photos of the previous saya that I had, and it was interesting, and in terms of its textural feel, though. I don't know how well it would work in an obi, or if it would catch, or if there's any pragmatic reason that you wouldn't want it. In any case, it was interesting looking, and from what I recall of the original saya, it seemed to work well enough, though I can't really talk on that part because I don't have one in hand, and it's been more than a few years since I did. We'll move on to the pointy stabby part, and this is an interesting piece because again, in the note on this blade, from what I can find, it did not get acid etched. It doesn't have a heavy etch on it, which means that it's really kind of tough to see some of the inner details on this sword. They don't stand out as much as they would on another sword. Supposedly it's differentially hardened, and I'm not sure exactly what material was used, but I can certainly see that it is differentially hardened, at least if the hamon that I'm seeing in there is genuine. However, both of these swords, the original one that I had and this one, have a look that is folded. There are little hints along the kind of the edge of the hamon that give me, I don't know if it's banding in the steel, but it almost has this texture that looks like it's folded, or this pattern that looks like folded steel, but supposedly these are not folded steel. So I don't know what to make of that, honestly, but both of them have fooled me and made me think that it is possibly a folded sword, though I do not know. The bohi is a little bit haphazardly made, but terminates at least somewhat evenly. The polish is not great. Again, it's not acid etched. There's not a lot to see. The lines on the blade are, for a blade of its time, reasonably even, but it has some ripples in the surface. It's far from perfect. Again, $360 or $370 sword. I'm not expecting perfection. This is, not necessarily windlass level ripples, but it's akin to windlass level ripples. It has some surface blemishes and things like that that are not great along the lines of a Japanese sword. The next bit is, though, in terms of sharpness, it's overall quite good, and honestly, in terms of balance dynamics, this is 2 pounds 4 ounces, and just it is a really lovely sword to feel in the hand. It is lively and nimble. Some of the handle material on this is a little bit lighter, perhaps, than other handle materials might be. I don't know what exactly contributes to that 2 pounds 4 ounces, but this sword, in effect, is just light and lively in the hand. It's very joyful to move around, something that is really comfortable to use for Iaido. I don't know that I would necessarily want to do a lot of heavy cutting. It said it was designed with competition cutting in mind, though I don't personally think it has the geometry to necessarily compete along the lines of some of the Hanwei XL or the Getetsus or some of the other performance cutting geometry blades that are out there, but it's certainly a lively, comfortable blade to move around if you want to do thousands of repetitions with a Shenkin on a budget. It has the feeling of something comfortable to do that with. In terms of cutting, I have cut with these before. It's really very akin to the Chris Cutlery KC blades, the Chris Cutlery blades that are made in the Philippines, as well as the TFW blade. Honestly, this blade reminds me a lot of those blades. The termination is a little bit different. It's not exactly the same, but the overall feeling, the materials that are used, gives me the feeling it may have been made in the same forge, or at least a similar forge, or by somebody with similar knowledge, because it has a very similar kind of lively feeling, though this one is a little bit more light and lively than the average blade and has a few more bedazzlements that the other two did not. So blade wise, I honestly really like it. Dynamically speaking, I'm going to put the dimensions and all that information in the commentary down below for you to see. So if you happen to find a Gen 2 BWT Katana, they are a fun sword and worth examining anyway. If you can find one at the original price of $370, or if one happens to be available new, or one comes up secondhand, hopefully you have a better idea of what to expect. I found them to be a very comfortable and interesting little blade for the money, and something at least worth taking a look at. Hopefully this review has prepared you to look at them more seriously or not seriously, and at least decide if they're worth your hard-earned money. That's all I have for you. Cheers, as always, and thanks for watching.